All right, with number 1 of our checkpoint exercises, we're asked to find the x and y intercepts of y equals 1/2 x plus 4. So to find the y-intercept, we make x equal to 0. So for this problem, the y-intercept, y equals 1/2 times 0 plus 4. So that equals 4, which yields a point of 0, 4. For the x-intercept, we make y equals to 0. So 1/2 x plus 4 equals 0. If we subtract 4 from both sides, we get 1/2 x equals -4. And then multiply both sides by 2, and we get x equals -8. So that gives us a point of -8, 0. So we'll draw our axes, label our axes, and draw on a scale. So let's make each one of these 1. Make sure we draw in those at least one value so we know that the scale is each tick mark equals 1. And then we have the 2 points, the y-intercept, 0, 4. And we have the x-intercept, -8, 0. And then we draw a line through those 2 points. And there is our line for the equation y equals 1/2 x plus 4. And we could always check a point since we're given the equation. For instance, if we put in -2, then we should be at 1/2 times -2 is -1 plus 4 is 3. So at -2, we should be at 3, and that's where we are. So our line is fairly accurate. All right, with number 2, we are given that a local manufacturer buys fans and bearings to build motors for their customers. The total cost for the last shipment was $2,000, and it was given by the equation 16x plus 4y equals 2,000, where x is the number of bearings and y is the number of fans. Use the x and y intercepts to graph the equation, then interpret the x and y intercepts. So I've gone ahead and I've written that information out. I've gone ahead and drawn a set of axes, a coordinate plane with a proper scale to where we can graph this. Let's go ahead and find the x and y intercepts first. So for the y-intercept, actually we'll start with the x-intercept this time. We make y equal 0. So 16x plus 4 times 0 equals 2,000. 16x equals 2,000. Divide both sides by 16, and we get x equals, let's see, that would be 125. So that gives us an x-intercept of 125, 0. Now for the y-intercept, we make x equal to 0. So 16 times 0 is just going to be 0. So we have 4y equals 2,000. If we divide both sides by 4, we get y equals 500, which gives us the point 0, 500. So let's go ahead and graph those 2 points. There's 0, 500. And with the x-intercept, there is 25, 50, 75, 100, 125. So there's 125, 0. And then we connect those 2 points to graph the line. And then we're asked to interpret the x and y intercepts. So with the x-intercept, that's when y equals 0. And y is the number of fans. So the x-intercept would be when the cost is $2,000 of the shipment. The x-intercept would be when it's all bearings, the shipment is all bearings and no fans, to equal that 2,000. And the y-intercept is when there's all fans and no bearings. That's how many fans that the shipment would have to contain if there were no bearings, and vice versa with the x-intercept. That's how many bearings the shipment would need to contain if there were no fans. Now with number 3, we're given that the perimeter of a rectangle that is x units wide and y units long is 30 inches. Write an equation in standard form for the perimeter. Find the x and y intercepts. Do the intercepts make sense as a solution for the scenario? Explain why or why not. So I went ahead and I drew this little picture of a rectangle with x as the width, y as the length. The perimeter is going to be 2 x's and 2 y's. So 2x plus 2y equals 30. I went ahead and put inches out there, though, for the equation, and that's not necessary. And then we're asked to find the intercepts. So the x-intercept is when y equals 0. So when y equals 0, we're just left with 2x on the left-hand side equals 30. So x equals 15. And that, as a point, would be 15, 0. Now for the y-intercept, that is when x equals 0. So we end up with the same thing, only with a different variable. 2y equals 30, y equals 15. So that would yield the point 0, 15. Now we're asked to determine, do the intercepts make sense as a solution for this scenario? Well, if you notice, when we have the x-intercept, that's when y is 0. But y is the length of the rectangle. And the same thing with the y-intercept, we're at 0, 15, which means x is 0, but x is the width of the rectangle. So the intercepts really don't make sense as a solution to this particular scenario, because if we use the intercepts, then there would be no length if we went with the x-intercept, and there would be no width if we went with the y-intercept. So there would be no rectangle. So there has to be some value for both x and y in order for a rectangle to exist, or we'd end up with, just a line, and that's not a rectangle. So no, the intercepts don't make sense. So there's no length when it's the x-intercept, or no width with the y-intercept, and therefore, these 3 little dots mean therefore, there would be no rectangle.